Paul Matthew back for part 2, talking about extraterrestrials, ETs, demons, God, and anti-gravity. Boy, that's a lot to say and write. I got to re-edit some of my stuff. All right, back to what I was saying. They had the guy's wife on the bed. They levitated her up off the bed. He was able to not be paralyzed under their control because they can look in your eyes and they can paralyze you through the optic nerve. He was able to manage to get up and go get a ninja or a samurai sword. I mean, I know what they are. I've had all sorts of weapons training and MMA fighting, and, that's more stuff I'm into or was into. So anyway, he got up and he was able to cut the head off of this thing. And it didn't disappear into a ball of light. Now, had he shot it with a gun, like with Bigfoot, it disappears into a ball of light many times. Not always. Sometimes they'll find a blood trail from Bigfoot, and then they'll find that, like it did disappear into a portal, or they even turn themselves into trees. It's the weirdest things, this Bigfoot. But anyway, I could shame the BFRO with what I know. I mean, those people disgust me. All right, I'll talk about that another time and why they disgust me. I don't pull my punches on anybody and anything. So anyway, the guy managed to cut the head off of this little 3.5 foot tall gray. It was probably, I've heard that our government manufactures these things and it's something to do with Satan uses them to do it. But anyway, there are real ones and there are fake ones, but they're very real. Just like, if you're a robot, you're very much real in the world. If you're an android, you're very much real in the world. But you're not an actual, an original person. No. So anyway, he cuts the head off this thing. Head falls on the ground. The other two, they come in threes usually to pilot the craft. I can explain why. They need 3 minds to pilot it for some reason. But anyway, the guy managed to save his wife. She probably dropped back down on the bed, screaming in horror. She was laying, naked. They rip, they get your clothes off to take your, obviously, open the woman's legs to take her ovum out. I mean, absolutely horrifying. Stealing her eggs. And you don't get eggs back. So anyway, the guy had the body. And, I was kind of like disbelieving the story at first. But I don't like to call people liars. So I started believing it. I was getting into it after a while. So anyway, he managed to send the body of the little extraterrestrial, kind of like the one that they dug, that the MUFON people were stupid enough to tell everybody they were going to dig that one out of that grave, if you guys follow that story. And they were so stupid, they told everybody they were going to do it, and the government beat them to it and dug up the body. I laugh because one of my expertise, I used to train it like a ninja. Yeah, and I used to go into places at night, and I was an expert at it, and I could have got in there and got that body out of there, but they were very, well, put it this way, I'm a wise man of the world being a minister. They're not. They're clearly not. So anyway, he gave the body to a man and a woman, an elderly doctor. And then I found out through reading on the online newspaper that the doctor got murdered and his wife got murdered. So I knew he was telling the truth. Yeah, so they took the body. There's another one we don't have. Now, Linda Moulton Howe, I followed her, like since the 80s and everything, early 80s, mid 80s, whatever. And I remember she said something about some of the reports. I haven't been able to get a hold of the autopsy reports, and she said something about when they went to cut into one of the aliens, it was, it was rock hard, it wasn't bone they were cutting into, or the skin. It was, what do you call it, of the creature? It was like metal. It was some kind of material. But anyway, she said that they have cut into the other ones and pulled out one big organ and all that. I think those are being made on Earth. I think Stephen Greer actually told the truth finally on something. But anyway, back to my story. We had, the humans, we had a body. And not me personally, but he had the body. And he was able to get help from an extraterrestrial spacecraft, a flying saucer, in other words. He said that landed, and out came a bunch of people dressed, they look like people, they're dressed in robes, they have swords. Well, those are angels. I mean, if the swords can have fire judgment from God's word, then almost all God's judgments come from fire. So anyway, that's how I knew they were the good guys. I don't understand how he was able to connect with some person, that a woman or something, that he said was going to send him some help. Boy, you want to talk about send you some help, huh? So I don't even know how this was done, but this person supposedly managed to make this giant flying saucer land. I don't know how big it was. Probably bigger than the 60 or 65-foot craft that Betty and Barney Hill got on. But anyway, that was how I found out they could be killed. Not because I've actually killed one. My own personal experiences with the Greys, and people say, "Oh, you're a pretty scientific-minded man and spiritually minded, so you don't believe all this crap, do you?" And my answer to that is, well, it's not crap. And yes, I became one of the biggest believers of anybody. You will not change my mind on anything, no matter who you think you are. And I would say, give it a rest if you're going to come and tell me that there's no such thing as angels and aliens or God. I'm just going to laugh in your face, It wasn't something I wanted to get into. It was something that came upon me. I had an encounter with an alien in a cemetery. I know they're real. People say, well, you're just nuts. Well, if I'm just nuts, then why did one of my best friends see it with me? Because he was right there. Shannon McLennan from Frankfort, New York. He was right there at the time, up at the cemetery. He saw this thing. Put it this way. If you show me something, there's a good chance I'm going to tell you what it is, or at least basically what it is. But this was something that, just blew my mind. This was when I was a much younger man. I was about 22, maybe. So anyway, the Bible does say, I found out through my teacher, my pastor, who died about 3 years ago, but anyway, or 2 years ago, he told me, or a year and a half ago, sorry, he died of throat cancer, so the devil got him. But anyway, he told me that demons hang out in cemeteries. I said, really? I didn't even know that. Never read that in the Bible. Okay, I don't know everything. Any minister that tells you he knows everything is a fraud. So anyway, that's really what it was. Now, I have power over it, and I knew I had power over it because I had known enough about the Lord, where the Lord gives us power over things. That's why Satan doesn't destroy us. There's different levels in the realms of demons and angels where certain ones can do certain things to you, but there's always a restrainer, which is a good angel, and they restrain the bad ones, and they'll they'll say, well, that's why Satan can tempt you, but he can't force you to do anything. You have to, rebuke him in the name of Jesus Christ, and if you resist the devil, he will flee. And believe me, I've had the devil come upon me before. You'll know it's the devil. He's that evil. You will not doubt who it is, unless you're some idiot that doesn't know the devil exists. But anyway, I've come upon these creatures. These creatures have come upon me. I've had orbs that fly around, and my friend Bob saw that when we were working on a car I used to have. I used to work on cars, my 57 Chevy, and there was a big orange orb that came out from the tree line far away, and it was speaking to me with telepathy, and I knew immediately what it was, and I didn't want to entertain it. I don't want to engage it. So it managed to hover really fast over toward my driveway and land on the top of the neighbor's house, or just like sit above it. And Bob was on the phone talking to his girlfriend, so he walked away. He's an absolute idiot. He could have just hit record. That's all he needed to do, and he could have recorded it. So anyway, people say, well, why don't you record these things? And I say, because they happen about every 20, 25 years. That's why. I don't carry a camera on me. And if I did, it wouldn't be at the right time. I have that kind of luck. But the Lord protects me. I've had hundreds of demons overhead before. I'll take a lie detector test, and you will absolutely find out that I am telling the truth. I've had encounters with these things. I know they're real. The one spacecraft was the size of a parking garage. They have technology. They do have literal teleportation. It comes down as a beam. It's similar to Star Trek. And the beam is partially see-through. It's blue. And it has like crystallization, like white shining crystals in it. And it's about 6 or 7 feet in diameter. It can take a car completely up, and you're going to be at their mercy. But the Lord was able to protect my mother and I. This happened around 1997 or 8. And I talked to another guy that had that happen. It was South Carolina, around near Rock Hill. And it was a large spacecraft. You couldn't really see it hardly because, I mean, you could see the black. This one was in stealth mode. It did not have a shield on it. If it had a shield on it, it would have been the brightest thing in the sky. It did not have a shield. And I don't believe it was the government. I mean, why would they do that? Why would they do that? Doesn't make any sense to me. People do disappear because angels know how to fold space. If you can fold space, you can grab somebody, pull them into a portal, and you fold space to get there and get out of there. And they're able to do it. One of the gray aliens that Stephen Greer was talking about said it had a teleportation device on its head, and I didn't really believe it at first, but I'm started to look into that stuff way back when, and I found out that that stuff is real. So I got into teleportation, and I learned a lot about it. What does that have to do with anti-gravity? Because the spaceship itself and the anti-gravity or hyperspace portal, they both use hyperspace to work. So you're not going to get a flying saucer off the ground without hyperspace. The way it basically works is you've got point A, source, B, destination. And you've probably heard this before where they say you take a piece of paper, you fold it in half, it represents empty space, and then it brings the 2 points together and you're there. Well, it's a little bit different than that. They don't always get that right, the physicists. It's more like scrunching up a carpet, and you're hanging onto the carpet with your spacecraft as it's being scrunched up, and then you head immediately, after you turn this device on, to your destination. Now, I'm not sure if you can do it manually by lining up the spacecraft, because all the planets sit on the same plane, which right there kind of proves God made all that stuff, because it's ridiculous to think that entire universe was made on its own, which I laugh at any scientist that, they can't even tell you how an atom is made. That stupid thing that we came from monkeys. Well, you want to hear something that's even worse than that? You go back, and they tell you that you were born from a puddle of water that was in a cavity in a rock, and some kind of lightning came down, and the amoebas were already there, and you slowly worked yourself up as in like a amoeba, a tadpole, a fish, a monkey, and it's just the most ridiculous thing. I know it's a lie. You go read your Bible and you find out how God created Adam and Eve. I'm not going to get into that right now. Not that I don't like that stuff. I just, this is the anti-gravity coverage. But anti-gravity has everything to do with God and angels. And if you don't think so, then you never busted the mystery wide open like I did. I can't really say I figured this out on my own. I'm not going to really lie, but I am going to just say that I discovered it in the Bible. And then I did learn through other cases. I did. So I guess I can get some credit for what I did. I wanted to tell the world decipher what was in the Bible and tell the world that I knew what creatures were out there piloting these craft. And I wanted to tell the world. I've told a few people. I get so mad about it. I thought about writing a document and having somebody sign it, over at the, what is that called again? Notary Republic, sign it or something. I don't want people to steal my ideas. But I've been an amateur inventor all my life. I've built a few devices and things that work pretty good. I was pretty good at it. But, mostly I've drawn them on paper. It doesn't take a lot to be Einstein. You know what I mean? What did that one guy say from that Tucker movie from the 80s? And what's it take to be Einstein? A couple of pencils and some paper. Well, it takes more than that, but I know what he means. So I would sit there and I would design thousands and thousands of things. And unfortunately, when I moved to South Carolina in 97, a bunch of black people, convicts, stole my papers. And I had enough to fill like 2 or 3 garbage bags. So, just really nice, all my hard work down the drain. So anyway, I came up with 6 or 7 or maybe even 8 free energy devices. They sit there and they spin. They spin all on their own. And yes, I can tell you right now, I'm not a fraud. That stuff does exist. And most people out there that tell you they've invented free energy or anything like that, they are absolute liars. The internet is full of them. I am not one of those people. I am the real McCoy. Now, I'm not going to be here forever, and I'm going to eventually send my works to my brother in Kansas, my brother Chris. Eventually, somebody will get a hold of Chris Zaffarano, and maybe the world. I could leave this with the world, but how do I do it? How do I take one of my inventions, describe, I'm not stupid. I know a lot about a lot. I used to be a mechanic. I can draw something. I can give you the parts, the part number. I can do the exact, calibration of the machine. I can tell you, the scale of it, what size is what, and not leave you hanging. But anyway, the problem with doing that is, I just don't know how to distribute it. I don't understand. Let's just send a mass email out to everybody and say, I might do that one day. Send a mass email out when I get about 70 or 80 before I die and just tell the world, you want to make a little free energy device at your house? They can't stop us all. I wanted to make a little device that could be made almost any size. Reasonably, you can probably make one that's 1 inch in diameter all the way up to, 50 feet if you want. And it could run a power plant. I designed it so you can add more stacks or discs onto it, and it can become more powerful. So the only thing that can really wear out would be the bearings. But, there's bearings that can go 100,000 miles, so don't worry about that. I think I was going to use ball bearings or needle bearings with the invention. I thought about using anti-gravity and magnetism to repel it, but then I got thinking it'd be easier to go the other way. And my goodness, if you can make it last for 5 or 10 years and they just have to replace a bearing in it, a grease-sealed bearing, I wouldn't really worry about it. Just like a pneumatic gun, you can use it for a long time and eventually a grease seal fails. You just replace it for, 30, 40, 50 bucks for a bearing or two and you're good to go. So it's not something that will last forever, but it certainly can be built again and built cheaply. I think you could probably build the whole device for $200 or $300. For a decent size one, maybe 15 inches in diameter or something. So definitely, you definitely could build this thing. But my problem is I don't want the government to come in and say, we'll give you like $1 million for this thing if you'll just be quiet. And then they take, the patent away. And I don't even have money for a patent, but whatever it is, they'll take the paper away and throw it in with Tesla's stuff or something at the FBI or the CIA, and they'll just, burn it or make sure nobody gets a hold of it, and they'll look at it later at Los Alamos, and they'll put it in a safe somewhere. See, I don't want to do that because I wanted people to benefit from my invention. Of course, I'm not going to give it away either. I need to eat. I need to live. You know what I mean? I need to have money for my family. So I remember Stephen Greer said, well, we'll go $100,000 if anybody can build the real thing. Well, guess what, Stephen? It's not going to happen. And you know why? Because if I build this thing, people are going to want to kill me. And I'm going to put my life on the line for a lousy $100,000. I want millions of dollars. And let me, before you go and say, oh, listen to what I'm saying. I want a little bit of money off of every single one that's manufactured and every part number. If a million people buy it, I guess you could consider I'm rich. I'm not getting the money Yes, I'm going to keep some for myself, of course. I'm not stupid enough to live on, but I want to donate money to the world. This is what I've wanted to do, and I want to help people. I really do. I don't want to hoard a bunch of money, but I do want to help people. So that was my plan from the beginning. But let's say that I sell an invention, and let's say reasonable. I sell them, let's say $1,000 each, and that's going to run an entire household. If you can't afford $1,000, I mean, then other people will copy it, and they'll eventually make them cheaper, and they'll have the labor in China and Taiwan and where do they make Hot Wheels again? Malaysia, whatever. But anyway, I'm going on about $1,000 to $1,500. I'll build bigger ones for $3,500. That's not bad. You go price a real generator, a regular generator, you're going to see that I don't think they're cheap. I want everybody to be able to have one. Maybe I'll even go down to $500 on the small ones, or $250. I don't care. I just want to help people. Now, I think I can do this. I really do. But it would be nice. I need a company, and I want some other people there to help develop a really good product. I want to develop a really good one. So I do need other people in on this deal to start this company. I'm just a single guy. I can't do it all alone. I want to hire an electrician, an electronics expert, and make the best quality device that I can. I've been working on this since I played with magnets since I was a kid in the 70s. So yeah. But anyway, the first thing that I knew I needed to make an anti-gravity craft is I didn't want it to be dependent on any kind of fuel or any kind of gas or any kind of oxygen, anything that burned any type of fossil fuel. I'm talking about building a free energy motor, because that's what's going to power the anti-gravity device, whether it's a car, a spacecraft. I would love to see a day where you can get in one of my ships, probably after I'm dead, like maybe 20 feet by 40 feet and the size of an RV, and you can go to Mars with it. How cool would that be? But, I think the government's going to take, or probably has already taken over such control of Mars and the moon. Well, there's not many places you can go, if I believe NASA. And I don't believe almost anything they ever say. Never a straight answer. NASA. But anyway, I've been ashamed of them for years. They've lied. I watched all the STS-48 and STS shuttle footage, and I knew exactly what I was looking at. I was able to describe the technology I was looking at, and all they come back at me with the same thing. Well, you're not a physicist. You know what you're talking about. It's all ice particles bouncing around. And, I tell them, you're absolutely full of shit. Yep, you absolutely are. Sorry, Lord. And I was real disgusted. Really disgusted with those people. They make me sick. There was a decision made somewhere where Werner von Braun said, we're going to break off and we're going to have electric spacecrafts that we're copying from reverse engineered technology from the 20s, 30s, 40s, probably the 30s and 40s at least. And you're going to use the traditional rockets and all this other garbage, and a space shuttle that hasn't been redesigned since the 70s. It's a piece of junk. It can't even get into space on its own. I can make space elevators that bring loads into space, and I can do it cheap. I can do all this stuff, but I don't have the money to get started. That's the embarrassing part. I'm getting old. I could pass this knowledge on to, people that are younger than me, and I could make something for NASA if they would fund me, and I could give them something that's 10 times better than any space shuttle that they ever made, and it's going to go up on its own accord. It's going to take off vertically, and I only have to start with a generator that's my own design and a free energy motor to spin it. There are two types of free energy motors. There's one that you use existing power to make more power over unity. And then there's ones that you can make, well, do perpetual motion machines in the traditional way. They are driven by rare earth magnets or any kind of earth magnet. So it's very hard to start with no electricity at all and build this machine, but that is the good one, and that's the one that I've been working on. I have had so many things stolen over the years off of my computer. Somebody hacked my old computer. I had a video of something that I don't think too many people ever would believe me. I had a video of a spacecraft from the 80s, or my goodness, let me think when it came out. It might have been the 90s. But anyway, I managed to get a hold of this video. I'm trying to think the year. Must have been after the internet came out. Oh no, wait a minute. They did play it on TV in the 80s. But anyway, I got a copy of it later on the internet. And it was what I believe to be the fallen angels, the Nephilim from the Bible, the giants, like Zeus, and all the ones that were on the Greek ancient demigods, the ones that have a human mother, and like Satan and all the other angels are their father. Those aliens, I think, I found their spacecraft, and NASA doesn't, or the Russians don't understand what they found. But anyway, it was on the moon of Phobos. It's shaped like a cigar, but it's sort of like more like a canoe, a big long canoe. And I believe that's where they are, because they weren't far from Mount Olympus. Now, there's two Mount Olympuses. There was the one that was here on Earth, and there's the one that's on Mars. It is the biggest mountain in the universe. So anyway, I had that video, and I had some other things on inventions and electrogravitics and, you name it. But anyway, it managed to get stolen off my computer. So I don't know where that ever went. Somebody broke into my house one time, or picked the lock, or whatever you want to say, or teleported it out of there. I had a whole big, I'll never forget this. I had a Chiquita banana box for over 20 years. Sat up, or maybe 25 years, it sat up in my attic, and somebody was able to get it out of here. I had about 16 or 17 folders in it. A lot of my work just disappeared out of the house. I don't know if angels came in and got it, or demons, or the CIA, or somebody picked my lock. I'm also a very good investigator, and whoever did it, this person was absolutely stealthy. They must have picked my lock, because I have double security doors in my house, on the front and the back. Well, I do now. Back then I had one door. But anyway, I learned my lesson since then. I haven't seen any of my stuff put on patents yet, so who knows who got it. But it wasn't really a lot of the good stuff. The good stuff that I've made, has we're after that, because I've been home from South Carolina, from Rock Hill, for 26 years. Yeah. I used to live in Westover Circle. I still remember that. But anyway, I don't particularly like to... I've had people call me before and offer me jobs and everything and come work for them, but, they're almost always out of state. I says, look, if somebody wants to fund a business and a lab and hire a bunch of people, or, whatever you want to call it, we could start something like another NASA. I would love to have it. Let's have something that's like 400, 500 acres of desert, and we can start making these craft. We only need to make them 20 or 30 feet in the beginning, test models, or even 10 feet. We can take them up and test them and do all that. Now, there's a guy that it was on Art Bell, called Space Warp Technology, and this professor, I was pissed off. Sorry, Lord, because I saw. That damn guy, sorry, Father, I gotta stop with swearing. That's my only thing that I deal with in life, is anger and swearing. But the Lord forgives you. So anyway, I got so angry because this guy was able to get some of his spacecraft up in there for testing, and I saw it on the NASA shuttle footage. I knew immediately what it was, and I knew immediately whose it was. You got to remember, there were people that worked on flying saucer technology all through the different eras. You know what I mean? NASA had investigated John Searle when he made his invention that was pretty much a free energy flying saucer. And I'll tell you, he's probably the greatest inventor that's not hailed as a great inventor. He's certainly a greater man than me to some extent. Although, of course, I do know how to build ones that can go to other planets, though. But anyway, he never did that. But he was going to send it to the moon, and the NASA stopped him. It was absolutely incredible. Get that. Johnsearl. Or is it Jon? I don't know. John Searle. But anyway, I read his book, and I have it. And I have a whole bunch of, PDF stuff like you wouldn't believe on this subject. And I just was absolutely blown away that he made something like that. The thing that he made doesn't wear out. It doesn't have any mechanical metal-to-metal parts. It doesn't. It works off of imprinted magnetism. But anyway, it doesn't mean that I can't build something that can put out equal power, because I certainly believe I can. But anyway, if Stephen Greer came to me and if he wants to give me a percentage off of every device that is sold, I would be willing to do this. And I still need 2 or 3 other experts to help me on this stuff. I can design the majority of it. And I just want to have a team that is good at building things. Because then we can build this thing. I'll be the designer. They can be the builder. But anyway, I think the problems that we have... Oh, I know what I was going to talk about. How do they get from point A to point B? It's so amazing that people will say, well, if aliens went at the speed of light, they still can't get anywhere very quick. Now, I know that's true, and I know about Einstein's theory of relativity, and I'm not going to get into all that stuff, because Einstein's calculation doesn't take into consideration that the spacecraft can have no mass, M-A-S-S, no mass. He's not considering that when he says that when an object moves at the speed of light, the mass becomes so great that it can't slow down, and time begins to turn red and distort and all this other stuff. You don't get that when you have a spacecraft that is able to... this technology is able to have its own onboard gravity. And the only way you could shut it off in space is if you turn off the drive unit and then you float around. But I'm not really interested in floating in space. I'm interested in walking around, and it's going to be more beneficial, and it's going to be better. The only problem that every spacecraft has is how to get enough oxygen or air to go with you. And I think it's going to be air, not just oxygen. But anyway, I came up with something that nobody seems to ever talk about. I didn't want to give this out. But what if we make a giant magnetic bubble around the spacecraft, which they do have a natural magnetic field once you turn on the generator that's, the proper shape and the proper frequency. But what I'm talking about, can't we put air inside that magnetic bubble? So between the craft, the craft sits at the center of it, and then out to the magnetic field, can we hold air in like a 5, 6, 7, 8, 900, maybe in a 1,230 30-foot quarter-mile bubble? Now, if we could do that and not turn that field off, we could bring air with us. I'm not talking about onboard air outside, and it just gets pumped in through an electric pump. When you want to leave Earth's atmosphere, you want to have a spacecraft that has a lot of strength. We're not using rocket power. We're using all electromagnetism to design the spacecraft. It's going to be an electric spacecraft. You gotta heat up the hull. You've got to be able to put a field around it to keep out all forms of radiation. And they're devices that you can build that are going to do their jobs. The first device is a free energy device, and that turns a generator. If you can't build that, then give up. I have seen flying saucers built that could not go outside the atmosphere. They weren't strong enough to pull away. And when they came back in, well, you got to charge the hull so you can break back in the atmosphere. You don't want to just skip off it and go out into space. If you electrify the hull with negative current, you will be able to go in. Negative electricity, they talk about it in these fields on TV, on these science shows, and on Ancient Aliens. I'm always hearing, these scientists that don't want to hear from me, and these physicists, and, Michio Kaku, who thinks he's God's gift to the world, which I can tell you right now, he's not. And if he were, where are his inventions that change our lives? So there you go right there. So they keep talking about negative energy, negative electricity. That is what you build to make a portal. And everybody keeps saying, well, we're almost on the verge of it. We're almost on the verge of it. Or we're on the verge of it. Or we're on the verge of it, and we've also managed, or we'll do it shortly, but then they're saying they're able to teleport an atom. Well, big deal. We're talking about teleporting an entire spacecraft. My goodness, the Lockheed Martin has been doing it for at least 10, 15, 20 years. They have a flying saucer. I mean, I'm not supposed to tell this, but they have a flying saucer that they launch, and it goes to Mars, and it gets there almost instantaneously. They have perfected the technology. They've got a plasma shield that's 150,000 degrees that goes around it. If you want to know what a plasma shield is, read the story of Betty and Barney Hill. When that craft that's 65 feet rotates, it's getting the plasma gas even and lighting it and around it so that anything that hits the hull of the spacecraft is immediately destroyed. Yeah, I know a lot about space. I know a lot about space travel. I've read a lot. I've talked to a lot of people. I'm no novice. You have to build things. You have to have your life support. Your life support's going to be air, heat, lights, backup systems. I've got all this stuff written on paper. I should have sat here with the papers in front of me. I can do that another time. I don't want to give anybody the exact secrets. I mean, this stuff is highly classified. I've read or listened to videos that Stan Dio made, and I wasn't real impressed with him to some degree. He doesn't even answer my emails, and I get really angry. He's supposed to be a born-again Christian brother. Well, the weird thing about him that I thought was weird is he's saying anti-gravity was discovered in the 50s, but yet he's saying that he knew about the Illuminati. Oh my goodness, the Illuminati, as far as I understand, has to do with Satan, and they have flying saucers that come out of the South Pole, and they have mind-reading technology, all this phenomenal stuff. They have to be angels. Now, I don't know if they're good ones or bad ones. I haven't decided that yet. But all I know is the one that what was his name? Trying to remember. Admiral Byrd, when he went down into the South Pole, and they read his diaries, he said he was taken down there with his little airplane, and they were able to bring it down vertically, and they treated him good, and he met the king of the world. Well, my goodness, if you read the Bible, King James Bible, and by the way, that's the only one to read. There's reasons for that. I'll explain it at other times. The other ones are satanic Bibles, most of them, because they're rewritten by evil men. So anyway, back to what I was saying. He met the guy called the king of the world. The king of the world is Satan. So after I heard that, I was kind of like, oh, is that who the head of the Illuminati is? I kind of thought so, but I wasn't sure. But anyway, one thing led to another, and he was supposed to go home and tell the world, and he chose his job Admiral Byrd more than he chose giving this information to the world, which he could have done in interviews. So I was disgusted with the guy. I was ashamed of the guy. I did not like the guy. I did not respect the guy. The guy would not tell the world, and they wanted him to tell the world. These alien beings wanted them to know that, stop shooting at us. Well, when I found out they had the symbol on their flying saucers that was a backwards swastika, I kind of worried about that. And I realized that was also a Buddhist symbol that the Nazis took and turned around. So we're getting into some areas, where I'm not sure whose side they're on. You got to understand what I'm talking about here. There's angels of the Lord and angels of the devil. Yeah, that's what we're talking about here. And you better believe they're the first ones that came out with anti-gravity. So what can I explain to you more about anti-gravity? I'll get into this other topic right now. You take a planet, and you take this is something almost nobody knows. You're hearing it from me first. The guys will love to get a hold of this on the Discovery Channel on Ancient Aliens and steal my idea. But anyway, here's what it is. I thought about this over 20, maybe 25, 30 years ago. You take a planet, and you cut out the cross, like a cross section of it. And let's say you can take out, just a part of the equator, theoretically. And you pull that out. Well, okay, that's what? What does that look like to you? Pancake. What's a pancake? Flying saucer. Okay. I mean, Betty and Barney Hills was described as a pancake. All right. So there you got your pancake right there. So they got the idea. And then, where the inner Earth core is rotating one way. And this is something that almost nobody understands or talks about. Except Linda Moulton Howe learned it from someone else. And I knew about this for many, many years. So you got the core spinning one way. And I'm not even sure how it does it naturally. You've got the Earth crust spinning the other way, and you get an anti-gravity effect. But there's still things you have to know. You have to know what frequency. There's just a lot more. You can't just build a spacecraft out of that. But I'm telling you about that because that's the basics of it. And that little center section that is pulled out would now have its own onboard gravity. And that's, that's how Ralph Ring or Otis T. Carr was able to figure that out, was copying the natural law of the planets. And he talks a little bit about that, or it talks about that in some of the old papers from the 50s. I have all sorts of things on Ralph Ring and Otis T. Carr and all that. But anyway, that's basically what they're doing. They're copying, the way a planet moves. But the weird thing is once it gets to a certain RPM, it flies away. And that was the disappointing thing when people started building these models, like in Australia years ago, like 20 years ago or 15 years ago, they were building these little models. And I talked to, one or two of the guys, whatever it was back then, two different guys, I remember. And when they did fire this thing up, first they asked me how to start it. I said, well, you have to add, battery fluid in this thing to get it going and put a charge on it, positive, negative. But anyway, they were able to spin it up, make a long story short, and the thing just flew up into outer space and disintegrated. They said, well, what do we do now? And I said, let me study this. So I studied it for about maybe 3 years, 5 years, and I realized what it was. It's spinning too fast. It doesn't have a controller to slow down. That's what's going on. So it's spinning toward the north contact point, and it's going up into space, which does us no good. So it flew away at about 7,000 miles an hour is what I calculated. A guy in Canada, he was so stupid, though, he didn't film it. I was like, are you serious, man? I said, you just did build something like that, and, you didn't even film it? I almost don't believe you. I said, but no, I do know what you're talking about, so I guess I do believe you. So anyway, it flew away. So in other words, if you build one of these Ralph Ring specials or Otis T. Carr specials, you'll get inside it and it'll fly away and you'll be trapped in it and you'll suffocate and you'll die. Now, I laughed about this technology. They got so angry at me, they kicked me off the forum that had to do with the OTC X1. I got kicked off of there. I tried everything to get back on, even having my own software that can hack into different accounts, and well, whatever I tried years ago, it didn't work. I couldn't get back on. It's their loss. You know why? Because I used to write articles for them. They're absolutely stupid to cut me off, but oh well, they did what they did. And bottom line of the whole thing is, when you look at all the plans of the OTC X1, I immediately noticed when I saw the plans, I said, well, this can't be all there is to it. Oh, well, it's supposed to be a very simplistic thing and it's esoteric and you don't understand it. Blah, 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 blah. Well, I understand enough about it to know that it doesn't have a controller. So then I found out, after I did read through all the material I could get, and I looked at the original drawings, schematics, whatever you want to call them, there was no controller to keep the thing spinning at a slower counter rotation. And my goodness, that was the heart of it. But I also knew from other knowledge of other demonic spacecraft, if you want to call it that, because some of it is, I also knew that I knew what the controller was. And I said, well, we don't have a controller. We have to make a controller. So one thing led to another. And the bottom line of the whole thing was what? I did not have enough money to build one. I mean, I was going to build one, like the size of a car, 15 feet maybe. Yeah, but plans change, time moves on, and I don't want to get in trouble like that, and I don't want to see my model fly away. And I knew it would fly away. We're talking about hyperspace. We're talking about hyper dimensions, and I'd be lucky to get this thing to work where it would stay on the ground. It has to stay on the ground. You have to have control of it. So I decided to design an alternate spacecraft. It is going to be one that uses a little bit of Stan Dio's technology, a little bit of keep saying Ralph Ring, Otis T. Carr. His technology, some of the ideas that Ralph Ring did, I'm not 100% sure. I could incorporate sacred geometry into it. I know a little bit about that. But anyway, we really need to... I don't want to be shut down again, so I would have to make it be taxable. It has to be taxable energy. And I really hate doing that. I could build one that runs on hydrogen. Yeah, I could. If I'm forced to do it by the government, I suppose it's better that I build one that can go out into space under any means I can. And I don't know why they're allowing this other guy from this other college professor to send his things up into space and float around and traverse around up there. That really made me so angry. I was pissed off. I'm not going to lie. Sorry, Father. But anyway, one thing led to another. And here I am, older and poorer, and I've had massive amount of kidney infections and bad health. If anybody wants to contact me that is into this subject, my email is D as in Dave, A as in Ann, Z as in Zaffarano, DAZ 1950 at gmail.com. And maybe I'll give you my phone number. I did some interviews, but people never played them on the internet. I don't know why. But anyway, I'm going to stop this now because this anti-gravity subject can go on for hours and hours and hours. There's a book by William R. Line that I could improve upon greatly. He's probably dead now, but I did not agree with all of his conclusions in his book, and I think they were terrible flying saucers, but they certainly were decent enough if you want to build something and fly it around your farm, I suppose. But I can't imagine you could ever do it and not get in trouble. All right, I'll work on part 3 later.